Is all choked up. So, whatever. Okay, let's just do the thing.
And we're back. Welcome to Recovery in the Middle Ages, the podcast about two middle-aged suburban dads and their pursuit of life, love, and recovery. I'm Nat.
And I'm Mike.
Today, part 2 of This Naked Mind. Nat's son turns the den into a movie theater and studies show that Naltrexone can help meth cravings. All this and more on a very special episode of Recovery in the Middle Ages.
We're not coming into our your ear holes this week.
Yeah, I deliberately didn't say that, so we wouldn't be reminded of it.
Why didn't you say that? I thought it was our new tagline.
I don't know. I think
the ladies love that sort of thing.
It's a little crass for my taste, you know. I'm very conservative, as you know.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm the most conservative guy you know. So welcome back to a very special and exciting edition. It is episode number 23, and what that means is that we are almost to 24.
Oh, so that means we're within spitting distance of 25.
Well, which is 1 hour longer than 24.
Oh, the day.
Yes.
Oh, we almost have a day's worth of programming.
Exactly. And that, I don't know why I've been focusing on that so much, but that's sort of been a goal in my head since we started. I was like, man, once we have 24 episodes, because we average about an hour, I guess.
Average.
Theoretically, you could listen to Mike and I discuss addiction in our lives for an entire day.
I think we told them this a couple weeks ago.
I think I say this a lot. I think there's a lot of things that I say more than once and forget, and my wife reminds me of that. Why can't I? I'm on the stopwatch. I'm trying to reset. Okay, start.
I better make a backup copy of this because the computer is acting like a constipated old man.
We're having a little trouble with the computer. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Apple Podcasts, and now YouTube. Oh, yeah. Yeah, we started posting.
Started doing something on YouTube. And people have asked about YouTube in the past, if I recall
now
correctly.
What we are doing on YouTube is not that super exciting because it's really just our show that's available through YouTube with our logo, and you can, because some people listen to everything on YouTube.
There's no performances.
Right.
There's no live stream. There's nothing. There's no Nat and Mike coming right into your ear holes live in your own living room on video.
The first row will get wet. Yeah, that isn't happening yet. That's one of my yets. It would be cool to do a YouTube-like show and get a set, and we could wear...
And people would know what we look like.
The V for Vendetta masks, I was thinking we could wear.
Right. That would muffle our delivery.
Or what was that movie where they all wore like presidential face masks? One was Reagan. What was that?
That's appropriate.
The skydiving ones. Yeah, so a very exciting week. Anyway, but also find us on Twitter. Tweet us at twat you twit.
You usually say that at the end.
I don't say it at the beginning?
No.
This isn't going well. And middleagesrecovery.com. Tell us your story. We are looking for people to type into our little online form. Give us a story, something to tell. We'll read it. It could be cool. It could be interesting. And you could also message us on Facebook. Get me at Natx at middleagesrecovery.com.
Or Mike R.
At
middleagesrecovery.com.
And he promises to one day check
I checked the email like a few times.
The incomparable, the lovely, the talented Erin Moore is going to be doing a new segment with the show. Still in development, but she's got a ton of great ideas. She is going to basically be our correspondent, our addiction journalist. She's going to use her knowledge and experience and her charming, sparkling personality to bring us the addiction hot chaff, which is all the exciting new things happening that are going to excite people. It's the recovered addict suburban mom perspective, and she's got some great ideas for guests, and I'm very excited for that. Not only that,
I've often thought that the local news should have an addiction correspondent. Don't you think?
I agree.
You know,
I think
coming
so.
to you live from the alley on East 194th Street and Decatur Avenue.
Well, they sort of. Do you remember when Chuck D was like the quote unquote urban correspondent for the local news in New York in the 90s?
I do not.
That was. I'll never forget. I was watching local news or something. This has got to be in the 90s, and I just remember. And now to our man on the street, literally and figuratively,
sure.
and it was Chuck D doing.
Wow.
I think it was like WPIX, you know, like or Channel 9,
trying
or something.
to get hip with the scene.
Yeah,
exactly. What they were doing?
Apparently, running reruns of Family Matters wasn't getting them enough credibility.
Yeah, well.
So, not only that, we've already got our first new author of the new year, Michael P. Dineen. He wrote a book called Suburban Gangsters. It's an addiction memoir. It looks nice and gritty. It'll be perfect for us.
Sitting in the back of my car, waiting to be read.
Right, waiting to be read. You haven't? No, I haven't read it yet. And believe me, I'm in touch with Michael and told him we're doing Annie Grace and we've got a lot to do today, so I'm going to stop the inane chatter. Not only that, our friend Sergeant Slaughter, my friend the police officer.
Is that what we're calling him now? Because I like that.
Yeah,
that's good.
He's requested.
Nod back to wrestling in the 80s and for those of you that remember that.
And he was a big wrestling fan. And so we're going to do Ask a Cop segment. So basically, we're not going to get in too much.
How do I get out of this drug charge?
Something, just whatever you might want to know. Like, you know, did you ever want to know, like, if a police officer pulled you over and saw an empty bag or something,
how many 20s do I need to slip underneath my license?
That. Like, does this PBA card that my cousin gave me really get me out of anything? You know, and so without getting into his background, he's going to remain just like as anonymous as he can possibly be, and it should be pretty fun and entertaining. So please message us for your questions for a cop.
Yes. But they should not be like ask a lawyer because cops are not lawyers.
Nope.
So legal questions, you know,
save that for our legal team.
There will be no ask a lawyer segment, I assure you.
We do not want to be disbarred, or at least you don't.
Or sued, more importantly.
Yes, sued would not be good. Okay, I'd like to ask Mike about any exciting things that may have happened religiously to his family. That's not a usual question.
Well, you remember last week we discussed my son got into the Catholic high school and I had to go ask the Monsignor if I could somehow wrangle a baptismal certificate for him to allow him to attend. So I went down there earlier this week into the rectory. And which I had not been in since I was a boy, I might add, although it was purely...
Were you on the church cornhole team that practiced in the rectory?
I was not down on my knees, if that's what you're implying,
that's a horrible
but
joke.
Yes, it is horrible. I really hope he never finds this podcast because he is a nice fellow. And so anyway, to make a long and not terribly interesting story short, Father... I can't say his name, agreed to baptize my 13-year-old son, despite the fact that he knows very little, if anything, about Catholicism. It turned out he was a graduate of the same high school that I graduated from and that my son will be going to. So there is a bit of a network thing going on there, even amongst the priests.
Yeah, it's called white affirmative action.
Or something. And then as a postscript, I go home and my 16-year-old says that when he hears his brother wants to get baptized, he says, I would like to as well. Now,
that's really interesting.
It was. And I said,
okay.
I said, you may have to go to a class once a week. And he said, okay, if that's what's required. And I'm wondering what they did with my son and who this pious boy they replaced him with. Although actually he and I have just been at each other's throats all week about the inauguration and politics and Trump and Biden and so on. But and then of course the younger brother Ben also has decided he wants to get baptized. So we got a threefer.
What?
Yeah, going on tomorrow at the church at noon. And
wow,
because I kept emailing the priest, going, "Can we make it a double?" And he's like, "Sure." And
buy
then
2 get 1 free.
When I go, "Can we make it a triple?" He's like, "The more the merrier." So
see if I can get baptized.
I'm sure you could if you just showed up.
Monsignor, my podcast partner would also like to be baptized.
It would be good for the show.
It would be good for the show.
I don't know. He was pleasant enough the Monsignor, but I suspect he thinks I'm a little bit of a flake, which he would not be wrong.
So does it cost per child to be baptized?
I asked. I said, by the way, is there a donation? And he said there is no donation, because I think he's looking at future revenue streams, 3 additional Catholics, more attendance
it's a loss
at Mass.
Leader. We call it a loss leader.
Yeah, exactly. It's get you in the door,
with
the holy water, and then after that, it's I don't mean to make light of the whole thing, because it's it's something the family's been thinking about for a while, anyways. So
religion is very special to most of us, in general. It's not something to screw around with, and who knows, maybe it's a good thing.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing.
I don't see how it could be a bad thing. How about that?
No, I mean, the church has some eccentric views on certain social issues, but
so do you.
Yeah, right? So
look at that.
The trick is making them sort of dovetail with one another. But
right, and I think what most people who send their kids to schools like that don't agree with the religious thing, and I met a lot of them at the school I went to. They're really just saying, you know what, it's more important that this is such a great school, and if you have to pretend to believe in whatever, fine with me. Mm-hmm. I ran into a lot of that at because I went to a Bible-hugging Protestant, Billy Graham's son went there type of thing. It's like that kind of...
That's pretty intense.
Yeah, he was also kicked out, Franklin Graham.
What did he do?
Drugs.
Really?
Yeah. I was among some of these very interesting people from all over the world. Like, there was one kid who lived in my dorm that was like a prince of Zaire or something like that. So sorry about that. Where were we at there? You were talking about your your Catholic children. So were they baptized, or has it just been set up now?
It's set up. It's noon tomorrow.
So should I come? Should I bring my whole family?
No. It's there's COVID precautions also.
I'll show up in a plague mask.
That would be great.
I'll bring up the gifts.
I did have to line up some godparents and stuff, and that's
I was
within a week. Hi, by the way, what are you doing on Saturday?
Remember that conversation we had about meditating and being a Buddhist? Yeah, well, my kids are being baptized Catholic.
The church has a long and storied contemplative tradition that's very similar to that of Buddhism.
I like the word contemplative.
Yes.
It's one of my favorites. So I'd like to offer you congratulations.
I would like to accept them.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I'm looking forward to greeting your children who will be reborn again in Christ's love.
I don't think they'll look any different. I've had to run around and buy them like pants and shirts this week because they don't have any clothes other than sweatpants. Basically, because we're horrible parents and never make them wear like nice clothes. Are they going to
wear one of those kids' baptism outfits where it's like a white dress?
I hope not. If that's being provided by the church, if so, because I'm certainly not getting one.
So that's very exciting. I'm always happy when secretly as a Protestant myself, I have nothing but good feelings toward Catholic Church, and I think
right, of course.
It's funny because I've been binge watching Oz, and if you don't know Oz, it was a show, one of the first HBO series that was really stood out. You know how everybody knows them for their great series now.
Right.
That was one of their first.
It was mostly about prison rape.
It was all about prison rape, prison drugs.
Which dovetails with Catholicism. How exactly?
Well, here's why. Because in one of the characters, he's from, I think, the north of Ireland, and he's an IRA member. Mm-hmm. And the Catholic priest in Oz, the Makata, the Asian actor who does the priest, who's great. But he's like the main religious figure at Oz.
Okay.
And so just all of this Protestant Catholic warring stuff. They bring in a new... They bring in Luke Perry comes in and he plays this TV evangelist who gets arrested for embezzling money or something
wild.
That. And so, but he's popular, and so the Catholic. So there's all this in this season, in the fourth season. There's a lot of infighting between Catholic and Protestant stuff, and it brought in the stuff with the IRA in Ireland. And you forget, in some places, and sometimes, this was a big Protestant Catholic. They think they're devil worshippers back and forth.
Not so much on Long Island though.
Not so much, but you know what? When I married my wife, it was a big deal to her mother and really to my parents. And we didn't think it was a big deal that she's Catholic and I'm Protestant.
Right.
But our parents' generation was my dad jokingly, and this is one thing he does, is he'll jokingly say something he really means and then reads the room. Depending on the reaction, he'll laugh or not.
Or doubles down.
You know what I mean? And and he was saying, he would always make comments about it. So,
well, the fact that
he called it a mixed marriage. That's what I was forgetting.
The fact that both my wives are Catholic is just like random.
There's a lot of Catholics.
I didn't go out and seek them. It was not like even a consideration.
It's about the same chance as you marrying a Muslim, because there's so many of Catholics, and there's like, how many Muslims are there and how many Catholics are there?
In New York City?
Just like, yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
I wonder. One of the other things, last thing I'm going to say, because we have a lot to do about this, is in Oz, because I am binge watching Oz, they sometimes watch a trivia show, and I learn facts by watching the show that they're watching on Oz.
That's meta.
The trivia. Yeah. And one of the things with the questions was, what country does the most number of people who speak English live? And the answer is China.
Really?
Pretty interesting. But that was the answer on a 20-year-old show.
No shit.
In a fictional trivia show. But I think it might be. I don't know. All of my facts I get from fictional trivia shows.
It's a good thing we're not journalists.
And that is what I have to say about that. I was going to talk a little bit about what we did on Martin Luther King Day. Had the day off. We turned the house into a movie theater, which was a lot of fun. I'm always struggling to get my oldest son excited about doing anything, and so when I get his interest, I run with it, and so it was really great. We spent the whole day turning the house upside down, so that when my wife came home, there was a concession stand set up with all this candy I bought, so he could run the concession stand. We moved, the whole room around, set up a cash register, and invited the neighbor friend Maddie over. And
great.
It was a lot of fun. And
Did you eat all the candy?
A lot of it has been eaten, and then I have hidden it, so only I know where it is.
Right.
And that was
hiding
a lot of
secret
fun.
Stashes around the house, are we?
I know it. Yeah, it's a little disturbing addict behavior there. And the final thing I want to talk about in housekeeping, and I promise this is it because I'm very excited. I just applied for graduation, meaning I have enough credits. Yes, thank you. Thank you. I have enough credits now to realistically project that I should graduate. After
excellent, congratulations.
Yeah, so after
congratulations.
I thank you so much. I started this journey in 1996 as a music major, and I will finish as an English literature bachelor, I guess you would call it.
All right.
So that's happening. I'm very excited. My new class is starting soon. And
what's your final class?
My final class is American Literature, 1865 to the present.
Oh.
So there's Faulkner in there. It's the Norton Anthology of Literature, Volume 2, 8th edition.
Gosh, I remember that book. Wow.
I know I have it, too, somewhere, because I've taken this class in some form over the past... Like, almost all these classes is like, I remember.
I had one of those where I had to take it like 4 or 5 times because I kept failing out of school every time I would try.
Right.
For me, it was like Intro to Psych. Like, for some reason, I could never finish that class.
Intro to Psych, yeah, for me, it was Music Theory 2, I think. I could never pass that. Well, those are the days. But we are very excited to talk more about Annie Grace.
Oh, are we there already? Wow. Shit.
I'd like to get there.
That was only 19 minutes of inane chatter.
Oh, do you want to do more? Because
no.
I've got plenty.
We're good.
It's just there are so many bullet points. It's such a great book. And we were talking about it throughout the week. Like, how much do we want to do?
We could literally do another 4 episodes.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody wants to hear that. But see, it's weird. I usually, when I read books, I like read them. And then I take, notes. I scribble in margins. But I've adopted your way of internalizing literature by playing it through a speaker.
Uh-huh.
So, but as I'm listening to her, I just sit there with my because I used to take depositions, right? Mm-hmm. And I would ask people questions. And as I was asking the questions, I'd be typing out their answer, even though there was a court reporter sitting there, right?
Okay.
So that's kind of how I got used to processing information. Oh. People would talk, I would just write it down. So I listened to Annie Grace, and I'm just writing. And so it's
great,
really,
right?
What I'm basically doing is rewriting the book in short sentences that when I look back at them a day later, they make very little sense. Sort of like my deposition taking, but
that's why I'm here, to make sense of it all.
Right.
But we finished last week's with the question. We were talking about Howard Stern's pain management doctor that was very famous.
Dr. John Sarno.
Dr. John Sarno. We just couldn't remember the name, so...
Thankfully, you wrote it down here so I could just read it as if I remembered it.
Exactly. But now you've broken the fourth wall. We all know.
That's okay.
So, we're going to start with your first bullet point here, health effects of alcohol.
Yes. This was really...
And this is This Naked Mind by Annie Grace.
This Naked Mind by Annie Grace.
Part 2.
And part of the whole thing for her, like how she develops this foundation for you to change your way of thinking about alcohol, is laying out all of these facts about alcohol that you maybe didn't know. I mean, everybody knows in the back of their head that drinking too much is probably not healthy, right?
Right.
All right. Although there is plenty of... there are studies and there are things that show that moderate drinking may be healthy for you, right?
What do they call it? They're like, it's not electrolytes. It's what is it that's in pomegranates?
Antioxidants.
It's got antioxidants.
Right. Spoiler, most of those studies are bullshit. And,
they're put out by like the alcohol lobby.
Well, but the funny thing is the way that they're pushed out into social media, at any rate, they are shared with far more frequency than, any sort of story that ever sees the light of day about the serious health risks for drinking regularly, even small amounts of alcohol. Those articles tend not to be written.
Like the cancer rate. The studies that show that even drinking 1 glass of wine per day increases the cancer rates by I think it's 30%, but it's
women with breast cancer, it's 15%.
Wow.
For 1 glass a day. But what the latest one that blew my mind was the statistic that roughly 25% of heavy drinkers will develop cirrhosis of the liver. Cirrhosis of the liver.
20%?
25%. Wow. So my question obviously is, what is a heavy drinker? And she doesn't really go into that so much, but I did a little independent research. I used Google.
You did?
And I Googled what is a heavy drinker, and apparently there is a medical consensus. A heavy drinker,
it's more than 4 drinks
for men, is typically defined as 15 drinks or more per week. So that's like 2 a day plus 1. Right? 2 glasses of wine a night plus 1. For women, heavy drinking is typically defined as consuming 8 drinks or more per week.
Per week.
Because their livers are smaller and, Yeah. So that's like 1 drink a night.
That puts 90% of everybody I know in heavy drinker territory.
And with a 1 in 4 chance of developing cirrhosis. Isn't that crazy?
It is.
I mean, and you mentioned cancer, so she says that no amount of alcohol is safe, and that light drinking also causes cancer. And binge drinking or daily drinking both have the exact same effect on cancer rates. So it's not like...
That's interesting.
If you don't drink for 5 days out of the week, but you get shit-faced for the other 2, your cancer rate is still elevated.
That's why it's like you'll see people who've been drinking for 40 years regularly, and they just seem fine.
Yeah.
But...
well, we all know the smoker, right? Somebody who's 95 who smoked... grandfather's 95, smoked all the time.
Didn't kill him.
Right.
Yeah, my mother-in-law. She's 76 and still smokes like a chimney.
Yeah. But that's like a self-selecting group because the ones that died early are not around, right?
That's right.
So obviously the 95-year-olds that smoke, there's very few of them.
You don't run into a lot.
Because the rest of them are dead.
Right. You very rarely meet an old crackhead, someone who's been smoking crack for 30 years.
They're out there, though.
They are. Met them.
I don't understand that at all.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
They should there should be an award for that.
Something.
How did you do that?
Yeah. But I guess, maybe there's some people have protective genes or what have you,
Yeah, there's got to be something like that. I've heard a lot of speakers say that thank God for crack because, they might have been using heroin or drinking for 20 years. And as soon as they discovered crack, it was 2 weeks and they were in rehab.
Yep. So elevator goes straight down to the bottom.
They're like, thank God I found crack because I could have died from something else,
I was able to keep up a pretty aggressive crack smoking hobby for, close to 5 years.
Wow. 5 years. Yeah, that's about what I did. I put it together with, it was never the star of the show for me. It was always just...
booze was the star of my show.
The star of the show was heroin for a very long time. But the guy who I bought heroin from would always be like, you want hard? I'm like, it's a frog's ass watertight. And
that's a good one.
because the answer, of course, is yes.
Right. Yeah.
Or is it?
But, when I was working at a restaurant buying crack, like it was horrible because I'd get paid in cash every day. And the next morning I'd have to look for change to get the bus back to work.
Right. And you're working.
Right.
So you're like, why the hell don't I? Oh, God, paying for gas with change that I find,
I used to run out of gas.
Yeah, me too.
When I had a car, which was not all that often.
Hurricane Sandy or Superstorm Sandy, I was in the depths of my heroin addiction. And, of course, the supply was way down. Not only that, but...
You don't say. It's an island after all.
It's true. But all of the gas stations were out. I don't know if you remember that.
I do remember.
You could not get gas. And I had to get to a town that was 20-minute drive. I just remember, somehow I had come up with a lie to get out of the house during Hurricane Sandy. I don't remember what I said. But, nobody was going anywhere. It was worse than the pandemic. Nobody was moving because everything was broken. There was no gas. It was just a nightmare. And I remember, it was on E when I left. And I'm like, there's going to be a gas station. And I'm driving to the place to pick up. No gas anywhere. Signs up. Closed. I finally go to meet the guy. Get it. Leave the car running. I'm like, don't turn the car off. The whole time I'm just so much stress.
Right.
Finally grab it. Finally come back. Oh God. I don't know how my wife didn't just kill me. When I came back
your wife's a
from
saint,
that,
honestly. She really is.
It's a miracle. But she knew better than I that someday this would be behind us.
That's great that people have faith.
Thank God for that. And in return, I will have faith in other addicts.
Right.
That's what we're supposed to do. And
positivity.
But I digress.
Yeah, because alcohol reduces life expectancy by 10 to 12 years overall. And another thing that I found interesting was the idea that alcohol ODing can occur from continuous intake over time. So if you're drinking every day and every day and every day, more and more and more, you can poison yourself and pull an Amy Winehouse.
Yeah, and I was interesting when I learned. I think everybody assumed Amy Winehouse overdosed on. I think when people hear OD, they immediately assume it's opiates, either heroin or pills. And so I was even being interested in recovery, I still immediately thought of that. So when I read that it was acute alcohol intoxication, it's interesting. Why wasn't that a bigger story?
I think I know why.
Why is that?
Because that would cast alcohol in a negative light.
Yeah.
People don't like that, And
people
don't want to think about it.
No, they don't. I don't know.
I mean, despite the fact that alcohol kills 1,692 people a week, far more than any other drug, but...
Yeah, and all of her statistics and the studies, it's all very well researched. And when if you really want to find the source of one of these, what she's saying, I recommend picking up the book. We'll put a link again in our show notes.
Please buy it through our link because we get a couple of
we get
pennies
credit
to keep the lights on.
Yeah, and it literally seems to be pennies. But we're working on that. When I read this book the first time, a lot of this stuff, you'd think, one of the repetitive things that you hear in recovery is you can't think your way out of this. I don't know if you've heard that.
I have heard it. I was discount it mostly, but
well, here's the thing. That was me. I was Mr. Overthinking. I thought I was so smart, even though I hated myself and thought I was stupid. I think most addicts will relate to that. I really did think, though, that I could outsmart it and that these people are so stupid. The first reaction you get to AA is this, what is it with this cult and these stupid sayings and, who are these people and what qualifies them? And you sit there and meanwhile, the whole time I was relapsing. And meanwhile, the schmuck that I thought was stupid was sitting there and he was sober, so... I don't even know what I'm trying to say.
I don't either.
So what I'm trying to say is that when I was first getting clean, it was true that overthinking would not have worked for me because it wasn't. I was not coming to the right because my brain was so fucked up from addiction, from use, that I couldn't. My thought process wasn't rational. So there is a point of time in an addict's recovery where you don't want them thinking. This is my opinion, is that I think I can think of a time where thinking was a bad idea for me. And so I get that. I get why people still say that. Where I draw a distinction is after a certain period of time where you've gotten stupid, you dry yourself out, you start to, part of repeating mantras like that is to get an idea that is generally seen as the right thing. So you reinforce that, even if maybe you don't necessarily agree with the details of it.
Right.
It's the larger points start to sink in. And then for me, after, 6 months to a year, I started being able to think straight and make correct decisions based on logic. Even though before, when my head was all fucked up, I thought I was thinking logically and making, sound, deductions, but I wasn't. So I don't know that this can work for the acute suffering addict. What do you think about that?
I think once the physical substance is out of your system, then you are just as able to think clearly as you were before. And here's why I say that, because the very fact that you've decided to stop thinking and to embrace a program like AA means that you have made a decision, a thoughtful decision, that is the way to progress. So you have not suspended your thinking. You have just made a decision. So I don't see how it, and to engage with the program and to do that work is thinking. It's thinking. So once you detox, which I can see how you need, there may be a medical need for detox. There may be some value in 30 days out of the environment that you were in to allow all this stuff to leave your system. But at that point, I don't see why AA is any more magical than any other process for you to recover.
Maybe it's not.
I mean, I don't know. That's been my experience.
It's not. I feel like I'm getting so far from the way I was thinking that it's hard for me to kind of remember exactly what was going on. So I'm sort of, but what I do know about this book is that now, or a year ago when I first read it, the state that I'm in currently, it was helpful because now I'm in my body isn't craving it at all. My mind isn't really even craving it at all. And once I got to a point where my body and mind weren't really craving it, but sometimes were, then that's when this really started being effective for me. Because I could think and be like, oh yeah, that's right. Like we are being kind of like duped into thinking that this is like a positive, happy, fun, refreshing thing to do, I
mean, that's part of her approach is to sort of take on big alcohol and explain how you're being manipulated. Which
like that resonated with
me. And
then
we're going to be talking more about that, but that's just a part of it. The other part of it is just getting your head around the idea that everything that you believed about drinking and using is wrong.
Right.
Like it's resetting your head. And if you can reset your head with AA, why can't you reset your head with This Naked Mind? I mean, it's basically the same thing. You're changing the way you think about your using.
Maybe you reset your heart with AA and reset your mind with This Naked Mind.
See, there you got to interject that spiritual component.
Yes.
See,
because I feel like the spiritual component,
which is great,
maybe keeps me clean more than it got me clean.
Okay.
How about that?
I think spirituality and recovery is a wonderful thing. I don't think it should be a necessary thing.
No, and I agree. And I'm guilty of, in the past, of poo-pooing atheist recovery programs and things like that.
Which I don't think this is an atheist program.
No,
it's just it takes the position that your spirituality is not relevant to your recovery.
Right. Yeah.
Unless you need it to be. In which case, have at it.
Either way, I feel like this should at least be more visible in early recovery. Like I didn't ever have, like the few things that really ended up working for me were not mentioned to me when I was like really needing help, like yesterday. Do you know what I mean? Like the things like the medication I ended up that got rid of my cravings pretty much permanently. I never even heard of until I met this doctor. It was 3 years ago. Was when I overdosed. Was January 4th, 2018. So,
when you went into a program, they handed you a big book, but not like any other book, right?
Well, yes. So the big book is the main thing they give you,
right.
Or the NA basic text, whatever you can get your hands on. The seminars and things, because you're constantly, and every day you're at a 12-step meeting of some kind, including, you even got GA meetings sometimes.
Right.
And
that book has a plan in it. It's 12 steps.
12 steps.
This book has a plan in it too.
What is the plan?
Change your way of thinking.
But that's change your way of thinking.
Same thing AA is doing to your brain.
Yeah, but I could have told you that. You don't need a book to tell you have to change your... Well, I don't know.
Really?
All I know is if I didn't... Right, maybe I
needed this book.
Maybe
because I couldn't make it more than a day.
Yeah.
I would keep... My brain was so wired for that 5 o'clock booze every day. And every time I went... It's, trigger identification... Change the way you think about triggers,
Yeah, I don't know. That stuff never worked for me when I was in all of that trigger shit. Like when I was in rehab, they do these classes, relapse prevention, and, they have catchy, stupid names for their like stinking thinking and all that. And you sit through these things and
relapsed long before you ever picked up the drink.
Yes, of course. Yeah, the relapse happens weeks before you pick up, sometimes months.
Listen, whatever, man. Different strokes for different folks. If people like that and that works, then
you know what?
Fine.
So the more I think about this and what I went through, the more I think that there is no answer for everybody.
I agree.
Which is why it's so easy to say, just abstain. Don't touch anything. That's almost like an easy way to, just don't use. Put the plug in the jug, Mike.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the only thing that would work for me. I can't imagine I would go out and have a glass of... Anyway.
Yeah, so I wonder if you got this early in recovery as if it was as prominent as the 12 steps. I wonder, do you think this would work for someone like who just got into rehab, they went out the night before, like, so many of us do, get wasted, you come into rehab, you're on detox medications, are you ready for this naked mind? Why not?
I don't know. I mean, I really don't know. I never had a problem with day one. It was day two that was always the problem.
It's interesting.
Because with a hangover, it's easy not to drink the day you have a hangover.
Or, I don't know, I was used to drink when I had a hangover. It made me feel better.
I just discovered that within the last year of my drinking was how much drinking the day after all that drinking was actually helpful for the hangover. I had never sort of...
You never put that together?
No, I was always too guilty. Felt too guilty.
I'll be an alcoholic if I do that. And so that brings us to chapter 9 here in the notes, right?
Did we go through Is Alcohol Liquid Courage yet?
No.
Okay.
Oh, I missed it. Liminal point.
Right.
I forget what a liminal point is. Isn't that the one that's like in the side space or something?
It's one in the side space, but it's commonly held assumptions about alcohol that are completely wrong. So in this one, it's the idea that alcohol gives you liquid courage, when in actuality, that's the wrong question. The question is, what's the value of fear, and how is fear and courage associated with one another? Right.
Right. She's talking about our natural defenses to things.
Right. So, fear allows us...
We evolved to have fear. It's good.
Yes, it's good. It helps us make good decisions and prevents us from taking unnecessary risks. And courage is actually doing what's right or just despite being afraid. So alcohol, as usual, gets in there and fucks everything up. So when you rely on it to decrease your fear, you fail to prepare for what confronts you. She used the example of she would do a lot of public speaking. So she would always have a couple of these small wine bottles in her purse and hit the bathroom before making the speech and,
the airplane bottles.
Yeah, grab a few slugs and get up there. And she said, she was never noticeably drunk on stage, but she was getting to that point. And her her public speaking engagements were often sort of lackluster and not very good because, the alcohol was actually increasing the anxiety rather than decreasing it and making it harder. I can attest to that because not that I've ever really imbibed before giving a public speech.
You never did?
No, I never did, but I did plenty of them hungover, and
that's the worst.
It's the worst, but it's also the best because I used to try cases with raging hangovers, and there is a bit of the fear is sort of gone because your higher level animalistic thinking is subdued when you have a hangover. Right. So I don't know. I was trying to leverage my hangovers to help me, like in the courtroom, and I know there's a lot of lawyers that do that.
How did it work out?
It didn't work out well. It actually. You can't think on your feet, if you have a terrible hangover. And when you're doing public speaking, I got to the point where I was writing everything down I was going to say, and if I deviated it from it one bit, I was completely lost because I just did not have the mental acuity to go back and sort of focus on it. But I don't know. She said something like very intense at the end of this chapter was that drinking to shut out life is the act of a coward, not the act of courage. So
yeah, and that's true. I mean, one of the worst parts about not drinking and using is when something happens, you have to deal with it. You have to feel it.
Yes. But that's what we're supposed to do.
Right. Exactly. That's called living life and being an adult.
And that's part of this naked mind thing is getting you to experience your life unfiltered because that's the natural state.
Right. She talks a lot in the book about remembering back to when you were a child. Before you, she says something like, think back to before you ever had your first drink. Were you happy? Like, you think right now that I can't get through today without a drink. Well, think back to the last time you could get through today without a drink. And how did you feel? And did you know that you can feel that way again? Like you don't have to be 8 years old to get to have a good time, not drink. Like pizza. Think about pizza parties and just watching our kids. Like they have a party, they're running around in circles, playing games and talking to each other.
Soda, pizza.
They don't need to get wasted.
Right.
They're just and the point she makes is that doesn't have to mature out of you, right. And that's what we talk about a lot in programs in recovery is that you can still have fun. That's a point that keeps a lot of people using is what am I going to do? How am I going to have fun? How am I going to watch football? I remember thinking that.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people associate the idea of drinking with fun just completely improperly. I mean, it's much more fun not to be fucked up.
It is,
but I would never have realized. I would never have thought that.
Yeah, had
2 years ago.
Exactly,
right?
You have to get some space from it. I had a sponsor named Brian a while ago, and he made a pretty good. When I was first meeting with him to work with him, he said he made a good point. We were talking about quitting drinking and using. He goes, make a list. He says, give me Make 10 really great, purely great, nothing bad happened, and you had just a wonderful time memories from using or drinking, and then make a list of catastrophic, horrible things that have happened, and just do it and bring it to me. And so, because he knew exactly what was going to happen, I came up with 2 that I could remember that had no issues, and dozens of catastrophic, horrible things that have happened, and he's like, well.
There you go.
There you have it. You don't, because we all have those few good times like that. You went out, you were a kid, it was great. Nothing horrible happened. You didn't end up in jail. You didn't lose your driver's license. Your wife didn't leave you. And,
those good times are usually early on in your drinking career.
Very early. And that's why it's so seductive because, you don't lie to people and tell them, you don't want that. That's no, you say it'll feel good for about whatever it is.
Yeah.
First time maybe. And then
you either have to stop or you have to keep pouring more on top of it to keep the same thing.
The cost-benefit analysis is not in favor of
it. It just tells you how deep the conditioning goes. Because I like the Grateful Dead, right? I went to a lot of Grateful Dead shows when I was a kid, and I was very blissed out all the time in there, dancing and listening to the music and stuff. And then I quit drinking for a few years in the 90s, right? So I would go running, and I would throw a cassette in my Walkman and press play, and it was a Dead show, and I would be running, and I would be having the same high off that music when I was running, which is sort of like dancing anyway, as I would at the show, flying on 3 hits of acid, and yet, like, every time I would go to a show, to a Dead show or whatever came after the Dead over the last 10 years, like, I would feel like I needed to get fucked up, because that was my original experience with the band, was that I had to be high on drugs or alcohol to enjoy the music, totally forgetting about the fact that I'd spent several years running and listening to the Dead with the same, physical feeling. So it really is like putting that stuff in the forefront of your consciousness is how you change your mind. Like, you got to think about shit like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And they say, play the tape forward. That's an old saying. Think
play
about
the Dead tape forward.
How is it? Yeah. play the live bootleg forward.
Anyway, sorry. That was just
I'm sorry.
It was like a diversion into how my mind works. But are we at chapter 9?
We are at chapter 9.
Oh shit, we're stuck.
Oh shit, we're
9.
stuck. Alcohol use puts you behind bars in a prison of your own making. Does it really?
Well, eventually, what is that? Is that Nicorette?
I'm trying to chew Nicorette gum, and I'm going to.
While you're recording the podcast?
I know it was a bad idea. Now I regret it.
That's okay.
I'm regretting it now.
It's fine, man. It's better than whatever else you were planning on doing to get nicotine into your body.
I was going to boof it.
Is that up your ass?
Yes.
Yeah,
okay. Can you boof nicotine?
Well, people do coffee enemas. I don't know why, but people do.
Does it work? I wonder. Alcohol use puts you behind bars. Well, it doesn't just put you in a prison of your own making. It put me in a prison of Nassau County's making. Where's my joke? Thank you. No doubt. There's a lot of metaphorical prisons and ideological hells you can be in, but it'll actually put you in a real prison.
Physical prison.
A physical prison.
Yeah.
But yes. So what was she talking about there? I mean, you wrote that one.
Well, the next line I wrote is handcuff analogy. So she has this, she says, okay, so think of being addicted to alcohol as, imagine you are the father in a household and you wake up one day and you find you have a set of handcuffs on. Handcuffs being sort of representative of your being yoked to alcohol, right? Mm-hmm. And everybody's like, you got to get those handcuffs off, right? But nobody can really tell you how to do it. So your wife takes you to the doctor, and your doctor says, you can't really do anything with those handcuffs on you. But the doctor doesn't tell you how to get them off. There's really no, they tell you you really shouldn't have those on,
right?
But it doesn't tell you how to get rid of them.
Nobody's showing you how. Yeah,
like you gotta get out of those handcuffs, or else you're just going to be,
so nobody seems to know what to do.
Nobody knows what to do, and people want to stop, but because who would choose alcohol over your kids? Who would choose drugs over your family? Like,
yeah,
right. I mean,
and that's like the things my parents used to say. Just do it for your kids, and it's like, hello, don't you think that if that were an option for me, like that was the way I saw it,
there'd be no addict parents.
Of course, I would never. It's not a question of, are your children worth it to you? It's just not. Right. And anybody who has actually been addicted to drugs or alcohol would agree with me. It's the people who have never been there that would say, I could never do that. Well,
because they're looking at it as a moral choice.
Exactly. And I don't know. Maybe it was a moral choice when I started when I was 14 and I didn't have such great morals. I don't know.
Your prefrontal lobe wasn't developed, so you that decision, you're not responsible for that decision.
I agree.
Entirely.
I am not responsible.
You know who is responsible?
Jesus.
No? Marketers.
Oh, marketers.
Yeah. And here's where she starts getting into the conditioning.
I happen to be a marketing guy. I'm just putting that out there. So if this is going to be a bash marketing guys thing.
Well, I mean,
it's all
marketers are good at what they do. I mean, and the best ones have psychologists on their staff and know how to get inside your head and fuck with you, and
certain colors. Actually, I used to design websites in finance, and it would always have to be like, it has to be like a blue, or you'll see banks use green. Like you'll never see a bank, for the most part,
use red.
like just red.
Yeah.
I mean, Bank of America is red, white, and blue. So there's a lot of that stuff. If you're interested in that sort of thing, you could just. There's a lot of that. It's very interesting.
It is psychology. It's interesting how marketers typically do not. What I found interesting is like the commercials that you watch, right? It's not about like the best commercials are not about the product.
They're about the person.
They speak very little about the product being sold, but mostly about what void that product is going to fill in your life.
Right, and they have to see themselves in the person on the screen.
Yeah,
that's why you'll see.
But they're getting into your subconscious.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to see yourself. That's why you'll see different ads for the same thing with different colored people, different age people. It's because they're trying to cast their net. They want you to see you in that commercial.
Is that why, I'd like to buy the world of Coke, where everyone's dancing through the field singing about Coca-Cola?
Yes.
And they're all different kinds of people and all united in their love for Coca-Cola.
Everybody. That's probably exactly what they were thinking, actually. Yeah. I might go to... I was thinking about grad school. I mean, I know I'm getting off the book here, but I want to go to grad school, and I haven't figured out what I'm going for.
You should learn how to manipulate people through marketing.
But I already do that.
You could get a degree in it.
I could.
You don't need a degree in that, do you? Psychology.
Yeah, psychology. I don't know. But yeah, marketing. Yeah, we definitely, every time they show an athlete, getting a refreshing drink of Coors Light, they're
right.
Or the sexy commercials where it's like, oh, so all the sexy people are, drinking sweaty glasses of scotch.
But that's completely like an opposite to what alcohol actually is, and that's that's why marketing is.
It's like turning the lights on at 3 a.m. at a frat party and seeing what's really going on. Looking at everything.
I mean,
it's a horror show.
If they can hook you on the product then sells itself, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's why cigarettes.
So what do you sell when you're selling alcohol? You're selling an end to loneliness,
right?
You need for freedom.
Refreshment is always the one that perplexes me the most because
sex.
If you want to get laid, you definitely got to get her drunk, guys. So here you go. Yeah. Here's your 6-pack of Zima.
I mean, right. But the reality is the actual product being sold is ethanol.
Yeah.
It's like a addictive poison, and the product's normal use results in poisoning.
True.
They don't talk about the side effects, like any other kind of drug.
Side effects may include your wife leaving you.
Right. Well, right. Any other drug, you have to have a disclaimer like that. Not alcohol,
right?
Because it's a socially acceptable drug.
What about the Surgeon General's warnings? Ladies, don't drink while you're pregnant.
Right.
Dummy.
Not like don't drink other times, though.
Right. You can get wasted the minute the baby comes out.
Right.
In fact, at the hospital, this is when both of my children, and this was great because I was seriously in bad shape when both my kids were born. Sadly, actually, that's another sad story I'll tell another time. But I remember once we were in the recovery room, they had champagne for us, like a little mini bottle and 2 glasses. Oh yeah, I needed and my wife had just given birth. Of course,
right.
Everything she should have. Been able to not have to worry about her husband being this degenerate. I feel awful about that. But look, every day I'm making up for it. I'm making a living amends. But I think I wore out the phrase "I'm sorry." I think like most of us.
Well, but it's like a mantra. You can keep saying it. And eventually, there'll be a result inside of you.
Well, that's why That's why I do so many foot rubs, guys. But listen, I think we should probably wrap this up for today. I think we were going to want to do one more show on this.
Yeah, because we got to get past we got to find what the actual process is for
That's what I want.
Revamping the cognition.
Right. So my big question is, okay, great. Sounds like a great idea. What's the, what is the program? What is the plan? Because she talks about this Naked Mind program and how many people, she's got a huge radio show that, actually we don't call it radio anymore, do we? Podcast. What are the kids calling it these days? And Mike is going to be appearing
next week.
Right, but they don't air it straight off the bat. So. Okay, so we'll get the air dates for everybody.
In case I end up sounding like a raving lunatic. She doesn't want to have to put it out the next day.
So, having said all of that, let's mark down where we ended. What was the last thing we talked about here?
Alcohol is the main cause of sexual dysfunction in men, despite what advertising would have you believe.
Great. I don't want to tackle that this week.
Okay.
So, having said all of that, we are now...
Where are we, Nat?
Recovery in the news. So, can you read this, even though I wrote it?
You have brought this story to us.
Covering the news. Naltrexone bupropion helps for meth addiction, but not a lot. That is the worst headline. I think that's Vanity Fair. So, naltrexone, a combination of naltrexone and bupropion was helpful in slightly reducing drug use for those struggling with methamphetamine use disorder, according to a double-blind, placebo-controlled study. During the 12-week trial, 13.6% of participants treated with 380 milligrams extended-release injectable naltrexone, otherwise known as Vivitrol, every 3 weeks plus 450 milligrams a day of oral extended-release Wellbutrin, had at least 3 methamphetamine-negative urine samples versus only 2.5% of those who were on placebo, reported Dr. Trevedy of the University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center in Dallas and colleagues.
I think this is probably bullshit.
Why is it bullshit? It's in MedPage Today is where I found that.
Well, 2 reasons. One, the low inclusion of women and participants self-reporting, which is how they collected the data, self-reporting of drug addicts being notoriously accurate, right?
Yes.
Reporting of the oral bupropion were acknowledged as study limitations. Plus, it seems like the effect was light enough that it would be within the margin of natural error, wouldn't it? I mean,
so
is there any reason this should work? I guess is my question.
Yes, and that's why I included it.
Okay.
So the reason why I thought this was interesting was because I took Vivitrol. I learned a lot about Vivitrol in rehabs and things, and there was this doctor, and God, I can't remember his name, but he made his career as a brain scientist, basically. He was a funny dude. He had a hat. He would come into the rehab, and he didn't work there, but he was like about educating addicts on like what's really going on with their brains.
Right.
So it was cool. So we got to sit there and listen to hear about his research. And so I forget what university he was at. God, I got to figure that out. But he had a really great presentation on like what Vivitrol actually does and how it affects the body. I've talked about this a little bit before.
Right.
And basically, first, he described how craving works in the body, why we crave things. And he has it broken down through his scientific studies that there are these circular globules in the brain that they're supposed to be, they're not supposed to be too gelatinous. They're supposed to be tight. But it's like a gel. It's a kind of a gel that they're made out of. So when your body feels craving, it's because those receptors or whatever they are, and I apologize for not having the proper nomenclature, but if you can picture them, they shake. So those are like just shaking in your brain while you're craving. So naltrexone, the physical action on the body is that those little craving globules don't shake. It solidifies them a little bit so you don't get that feeling of that physical craving.
Right.
And so according to that doctor at the time, and this is years ago before this came out, he actually said, like, look, Vivitrol, like, yes, it blocks opiates. Okay. And that was a happy side effect that they discovered after they developed it.
Oh, I see.
But it was really developed for alcohol because it acts on all cravings. And so, and that's why, like maybe this study doesn't really give us definitive evidence, but it reminded me that naltrexone is supposed to be, and it was for me, a miracle cure pretty much against all of my cravings. I mean, I also took...
That's interesting.
It is. Well, because I also took Campril, which is a pain in the ass to take. It's 2 pills 3 times a day. And I took that. That's another craving killer. I took that for like 6 months along with Vivitrol. And I didn't want to smoke. I didn't want to drink. I didn't have that feeling that so many of us get right after we've, lost our drug of choice or whatever. And so it allowed me to focus more on, and on top of it, it blocked opiates. So I didn't have to worry about,
Miracle drug.
It was, for me, it worked like a miracle drug, and I can see why it helped. It could be helpful for meth addiction.
I think they need to study it a little more and try and tease out why the results were not so stellar, though.
Yeah, I mean, they're on the right track. You know what I mean?
That's fascinating. I really, anything that can help. From what I understand, meth addiction is its own type of hell to be in.
Yeah, and so that's really interesting. I don't know. Ask your doctor if you're struggling. I feel like I'm one of those commercials. Ask your doctor about Naltrexone.
Naltrexone is right for you.
Right. So that's Recovery in the News.
Yeah.
And you are going to read This Week in Weird.
The Week in Weird, which is, according to your notes, not Gwyneth Paltrow's exploding vagina.
Yeah, sorry, Sergeant Slaughter. That was his. He wanted me to do that story, but I found something that's more paranormal. But we are getting some contributors from the audience. But today,
I promise we will get back to Gwyneth Paltrow's exploding vagina another day.
Sorry.
Could the Loch Ness monster be an ancient sea turtle? A scientist who has spent decades researching the Loch Ness monster has put forth a fascinating new theory, which argues that the creature could be an ancient sea turtle. The thought-provoking idea is reportedly the brainchild of Dr. Henry Bauer, a retired chemistry professor from, of course, from Virginia Tech, who developed a personal interest in Scotland's famed cryptid back in the 1980s and has written several papers, as well as a book on the creature. In his latest work, which was published last spring but only recently gained attention from the media, he dismisses the popular notion that Nessie might be a plesiosaur or perhaps a giant eel, and instead offers a rather fantastic alternative. He posits that the rarity of surface sightings, this is a lot to read, and as well as the occasional sightings on land, would seem to preclude the possibility that the creature is a plesiosaur. Sightings on land? On the contrary, he contends that everything described for the Loch Ness monster would seem to match the description of many living and extinct species of turtles. Okay. Specifically, he notes Nessie reports would appear to indicate that the mysterious creatures in Loch Ness are air-breathing but spend long periods of time in deep water. I confess this is more than I've thought about the Loch Ness monster probably my entire life.
Well, that's part of why I chose this article, because I feel like people are just not aware of how much research and brain power is globally being dedicated to figuring out what's going on at Loch Ness.
Everybody needs a hobby.
I mean, what else is a retired chemistry professor supposed to do?
I don't know.
So, thank you. And that's This Week in Weird.
It is.
We've had such a great show. I'm so
Thank you for joining us on our journey into the subconscious.
Thanks, everybody. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter. Tweet us at TwatYouTwit.
That's twice now.
On Instagram, Apple Podcasts, wherever great podcasts are sold. Please visit us at middleagesrecovery.com. Submit your story for a new segment called Your Story. It's not actually new anymore, but
an old segment that no one pays any attention to.
Also, here's the new thing. It's called Ask Sergeant Slaughter. Addict questions for cops. Our good buddy Sergeant Slaughter has agreed to take questions from all of you degenerate addicts out there who are looking to evade the police. He will be anonymous. You
this
can
is
ask
a
him
public
anything.
Service, man. It really is.
So send us an email at natx@middleagesrecovery.com. And as we say, non proficiat perfectum.
Progress, not perfection.
See you next week, guys.
Be good.
Thank you.